always thought I was inclusive. After all, I had great role models. These are my parents. They immigrated to this country to further their medical careers, coming from Norway and Peru to meet in New Jersey. And there, they were serving the same patient and met, and something clicked. Each brought with them a worldview, so they valued differences. After all, they were living it. After marriage and a few years in Peru, where my brother was born, they moved back to the States and settled in New Hampshire to grow their family. So while we grew up in a not so diverse New Hampshire, we benefited from family friends from all over the world. Peru, Uruguay, Argentina, Norway, Sweden, Finland, France, Poland, India, Germany. With exposure to that worldview, how could I not be inclusive? This was my favorite big picture deck card because it represented how I saw diversity. Every single time we did a big picture deck exercise, I would find a way to choose this card and make it fit. It drove people crazy. But I was proud. I was proud that I was so inclusive. I was proud that our Y was so inclusive. Everyone was welcome at our Y. But was everyone really welcome at our Y? What happens when we're faced with something unfamiliar, something uncomfortable? What happens when we react with fear to that? Well, I found out. You see, a transgender woman came to our Y and wanted to take out a membership. Now, for point of reference, transgender is one term sometimes used by those whose gender identity is different from the sex assigned to them at birth. Gender expansive is another term. Gender identity is how we are wired in our brains from birth. So this woman came to our Y and wanted to take out a membership. And our membership staff person welcomed her in. But then she said, and I prefer to use the women's locker room. Now you see, she had not gone through transition, so anatomically she was still male. And our membership staff person said, I'm sorry you can't, but you're welcome to use our private or independent locker room. To her credit, she said no. I prefer to use the women's locker room. And as you can imagine, this conversation ended up coming to me. I was in a quandary. Of course I wanted to be welcoming and inclusive. That's what I was all about. But what if the other women in the locker room were uncomfortable? What if they didn't like it? What if they all quit? What if I became known as that CEO who sabotaged my membership and went out of business? What do I do? What I did was call Sid. Sid was a personal trainer at one of our branches, and he's transgender. It was at our Y that he chose to change his pronoun from she to he. He also happened to choose to use the private locker room. So I thought, I'll ask Sid, he'll help me. So I called him, I shared the situation, and I asked him what he thought. His response, Helen, you can't not do this. No question, no hesitation, no debate. He then went on to share some of his personal experiences with me and reminded me that what everyone really needs is to belong and to be valued for who they truly are. So I hung up the phone knowing he was right, but also thinking, oh, Helen, why did you call him? I was still scared. RY had made a commitment to diversity and inclusion and global awareness. But I knew that this was going to be a moment of truth for us. I started talking with staff and the board, and I heard the same fear and judgment. Why would we accommodate a few at the expense of many? What if people don't like it? What if they quit? Why would we put our members at risk? You see, there are a lot of stereotypes and false narratives about the transgender community. It wasn't our members who were at risk. Transgender individuals are often faced with an increased threat of violence to themselves. We didn't know that yet, though. So I was still in a quandary. What do I do? So my next step was to call the YMCA of the USA. And that's when I met Chad Hugh from the Diversity and Inclusion team. I thought, he'll help me. And I asked, what other Y has been through this? What other Y can we learn from? What other Y can tell us what to do? Now, this was back in 2013, 5 long years ago. And the answer I heard was, we don't know of another Y. But I also heard, but we'll walk through this journey with you. And the best advice that Chad gave me in that moment was, don't make this a transgender issue. This is a diversity and inclusion opportunity. So this became my North Star. And we began talking instead of reacting. And when we looked at all the different dimensions of diversity, we realized diversity is everywhere. And even though we live in the state of Maine, which is often called the oldest, whitest state in the country, we realized that we had diversity of different kinds. Things like parental status, geographic location, non-traditional religions were some that resonated with us. And we realized that we had to value all dimensions of diversity. We also knew that we had to honor people's personal beliefs, especially when they were different than ours. But we needed to ensure that people behaved in a welcoming and inclusive way. So we created our promise statement, which said essentially that we know that we are the strongest when all people can thrive at the Y. That we honor each person's individual personal belief. And we expect everyone to behave in a welcoming and inclusive way. What we also realized is that we needed other organizational changes. It turns out privacy was a need that crossed many dimensions of diversity: age, diverse abilities, appearance and body type, religion, cultural background, and gender. So we made sure that in each one of our locker rooms, there was a private showering space and a private changing space for somebody to use for themselves. We were also reminded about our changing community demographics. We're seeing grandparents coming to live with their grandkids and their kids for a variety of reasons. We were seeing immigrants coming to this country and our community with their extended families. So we knew that we needed to change our family membership definition and make it even broader so that it was all adults and all children living in the same household. And very simply, we said gender is self-identified. So our newly formed diversity and inclusion team took this out to all of our staff and our board, about 500 people. And in small groups, we shared it, we talked, we listened. And at the end of each conversation, we asked people to share one word about how they were feeling. Ready, proud, informed. It was inspiring. We were ready, or so we thought. It was after a training that one staff member came up to me and said, Helen, if you make me believe this, I don't feel welcome at the Y. You see, she had just listened to Sid and refused to refer to him using a male pronoun. She told me, transgender is a sin. God intended her to be a female, and she's going to hell. I took a step back and went to our promise statement. I had to remind myself as well as her. And I said, I'm not asking you to change your beliefs. I honor that. But what I am asking is, can you behave in a welcoming and inclusive way towards Sid, just as I would ask Sid to behave in a welcoming and inclusive way towards you? She went home that weekend. She talked with her family. She prayed, and she went to church on Sunday. And her pastor that Sunday chose to give a sermon about how God teaches us to love all people. So she was able to come back on Monday and say, yes, I can. I can stay true to my faith beliefs, and I can be welcoming and inclusive and behave in a welcoming and inclusive way. So now we really were ready. And we implemented the changes, and we shared our commitment to diversity and inclusion with members and volunteers. I received a number of notes of thanks and pride. I also know of one member who chose to leave because of it. But overall, we saw a continued growth in membership. And the transgender woman I mentioned earlier, she joined the Y, she used the women's locker room, and she started a healthy living journey with us at the Y. We were proud. We are proud. Our community is proud. As part of our annual membership survey, we ask people, what do you like about the Y community? And some of the comments we've heard, no matter who you are welcome at the Y. I see new Americans welcomed and feeling safe here. Because I see a variety of people, including young families, teenagers, seniors, disabled veterans, and others, having a lot of healthy fun. I love seeing the diversity of ages, genders, races, sexuality, of people using the Y and letting my kids see that we are friends with everyone. And I see them living out the motto, everybody is welcome. And one comment in particular, what I value most about the Y is that it feels like a place where diversity and inclusion are paramount. Much of our lives is segregated by socioeconomics and demographics. So I appreciate being in a place where everyone is equally welcome. I also enjoy the opportunity to make a momentary connection over a children's swim lesson or other activity with someone who I ordinarily wouldn't have a chance to interact with. It's incredibly important for our children to see a model community where everyone treats each other respectfully, regardless of differences. This has been my journey. I know it's not over, and it's a challenge I welcome.